Hi everyone, welcome to the video. In this one we're going to be talking about MAME. So a quick overview of the history of MAME, what ROMsets are, what ROM versions, emulator versions, etc. And then how to add it into RetroBat. So actually adding it in is the same as any other system. You put the ROMs, the games in the right folder and away you go. But the thing with MAME is the versions. You've got the versions of the ROMs, the versions of the emulator itself, they have to match. So there's lots of things to consider. It's not always that straightforward, and sometimes if you've got ROMs that you acquired previously, you may not know what version they are, and you might find you get some issues with some games. So yeah, hopefully help explain it. So yeah, bear with me. I like to aim the videos at sort of all sort of knowledge levels or experience levels. So if you're just looking how to add it into RetroBat and you kind of know what MAME is already, bear with me. Don't worry, I'm not going to ramble on for hours like I sometimes do. Just going to go through a quick history, so bring them up to speed so everyone's on the same page, and then show the best way to add it into RetroBat. So I guess to start with, this is the RetroBat Wiki. Also, I put all these links into the description. But the first thing, I guess for MAME itself, it's been around for quite a while now. It's multi-arcade machine emulator. As the name suggests, it emulates arcade machines, and obviously there's multiple ones made by multiple companies. All the work's slightly different, so the fact that it can emulate all these is pretty good. So I guess the main thing around MAME is, like I say, is the versions. So before you start, you want to make sure you've got a decent or a working ROM set or set of ROMs. And the wiki here, you can read this yourself. I won't go through the whole lot, but it explains quite nicely what the difference is, or what they mean when someone talks about a ROM or a ROM set. So as it says here, the arcade machines are basically they're referred to as ROMs, and they're stored in zip files. And to run an arcade machine, it could be a single ROM, but normally it's a handful of ROMs that are inside that zip file. And I guess just to this is a little bit noddy, but just to kind of help explain it, arcade cabinet, inside you've got circuit boards, and then each one of these here is a ROM, read-only memory. So basically it contains the code for the game is burnt in a factory, gets put on the board and sent out, and then basically the system reads it when it boots up. So a game could be made up of multiple ROMs, and so when you talk about ROM dumps, people have got these circuit boards, they've got the physical arcade cabinet, and they've dumped the contents, the code off these ROMs to create the files, the ROM files. So hopefully that makes sense. So when people talk about ROMsets, that's what they're talking about, that collection of ROMs in a zip file. And unlike other emulators, with MAME and same for Final Burn Neo, which is another arcade emulator, the ROMs should stay in zip format. You shouldn't unzip them. The emulator expects to see them in a zip file, and that's obviously a .zip, or in later versions of MAME they supported 7-zip. So if you've got with an extension of .7z, that's fine. Whereas the other emulators, most of them you've got the choice. You can have them zipped, and when the emulator runs them, it will extract them on the fly to a temporary location and run the game. So you can store them in zip files to save some space. But if you're not worried about storage, and you've got plenty of storage, and you want them to load as quick as possible, then you can unzip them. But you kind of got the option. But like I say, with MAME, always keep them in a zip file. That's how it expects to run them. And then the next thing is around, as it says here, ROM versions and ROM set versions and versions of the emulator. So what you'll have is, and it explains it here, but if you go to the MAME website, mamedev.org, you'll see, if I go to previous versions, obviously they release a version roughly once a month. It's roughly the end of each month there's a new version comes out. So this is the version number that you see referred to. So the current one is actually 259. Also, I'm looking at previous here. So 259 is the current one. You see each year there's several, roughly 12 versions released each year. So you go back in time, obviously this number increments. So and each time they bring out a new version of MAME, there's then a new ROM set defined. So where they update the emulator to maybe get some old games working that weren't working before, or there's some new dumps of new games coming into the ROM set. So they basically have that makes up the new ROM set. So if you've got MAME emulator version 0.211, you need the 0.211 ROM set to go with it. You might find if you've got a slightly mismatched version, most games would probably work, because obviously not every single game in ROM changes between the versions, but there'll be some that won't work because they're the wrong version. So it's much better to make sure your ROM set version matches your emulator version. So hopefully that makes sense as well. And just back to finish off this bit around sort of ROMs, the way they're stored is different as well. And you've probably heard things about merged, non-merged, split. It's basically how the ROM is stored. And again, you can read this for yourselves, but it's quite quick and simple. So if you've got a full non-merge, so all ROMs or ROM sets can be used standalone because each zip contains all the files needed to run that particular game. If you've got a non-merged ROM, all ROMs can be used standalone because each zip contains all the files needed to run the game, including any files from parent ROMsets. And just to say, when you talk about parents and clones, I've got a little picture here which might help explain that a little bit better. Make it a bit bigger. This only covers the 3 versions, but so basically, so parent is kind of like, I guess, the original game. So let's say, this is so I use Pac-Man as a version, an example, but it's a little bit confusing because in America and sort of Europe it's called Pac-Man, but the actual original zip file was called Puck-Man. The original version was from Japan. But anyway, so you got the parent, so the original game, which is here, and then the clones are what could be a bootleg version or a version of that game in a different language. So, for example, say this is the English, European / American version of a game, and this is the Japanese version of it. The bulk of the game is going to be the same. All the ROMs are going to be the same, but there'll be one or two that are different, just because it's in a different language. The text on screen is in Japanese, not English. So, like I say, the bulk will be the same. There'll be slight differences. So, if you've got non-merged, you have one zip file here, which will be, I don't know, say it's not called this, but say Pac-Man A.zip, and this one is a clone. It could be Pac-Man B.zip. And so if you had both of these, you can run them independently. You could delete the clone and just have the English version. That'd be fine. You could delete this and just have the clone version, so just the Japanese version, and that would run. So they're not dependent on each other. Then you have the merge set, where it basically will take those two, merge them together into one zip file. So then when you go to run that game, you'll then have the choice, and MAME will say, which one do you want to run? Do you run the Pac-Man A, or do you want to run Pac-Man B, i.e. the English version, or do you want to run the Japanese version? And then the split one is, so this will split them out, so you can run them separately. But what it will do, the clone will only have the differences. So again, this saves a bit of space because obviously you don't have duplication, and it means that if you're putting your ROMs into a front end, you can list them all separately. And so when you click on launch this zip file from your front end, it will launch straight away. We won't say, oh, which version do you want to play? It will just launch it, and the same for this one. But if you've got this one, you must have this one in your collection as well, because obviously all the main files it will read from here. So when it actually launches, it will read both of these files to play the game, and also just use these differences. Hopefully, I was quite quick and brief, but hopefully that kind of explains the merge and non-merge. Like I say, there's the text in here on the wiki for RetroBat, which explains it. So also I put the links in, and they use Pac-Man, the Puck-Man as an example there as well. There's also on this page here, which we'll come to later. This is kind of where I get the sets from. There's a bit more of a more detailed explanation around the between a split, a merge, and non-merge set. If you're putting your stuff into something like RetroBat, like a front end, I'd recommend having the non-merged, because then you have a zip file per game. So then, as the game appears in your list, your game list in RetroBat, they all appear as a separate item on the list. So anyway, yeah, read those, but hopefully that picture and that helped to explain it slightly. So I guess now on to I wasn't quickly say as well, just on MAME. Obviously it's an arcade machine emulator. Back in the day, there used to be a sister project called MES, which I think was the Master Emulator Super System, or Multi Emulator Super System. So basically, it can emulate things like home computers and consoles. And then I think it's probably a few years ago, that got merged into MAME. So now MAME can do not just arcade machines, it can do home consoles, Mega Drive, Master System, Genesis, depending where you're from, and home computers as well, like the Amiga and etc. It can do all them, and there's separate sets for them. So actually, while I'm on this page, I'll show you that. This is, I'll get a link. So PleasureDome, their GitHub site. Each month when a new version of MAME is released, they'll release these sets here for you to download. So if we just come down here, there's full sets. So actually 259 is the latest version. So there's a merged version and non-merged version, and then you have a DAT file to go with it, which DAT files are probably covered in a different video, because basically the DAT file is kind of, I guess it's like the control file, that especially a text file, an XML file. Inside it says, okay, well, here's all the ROMs that should be in this ROM set. Here's their CRC, their kind of it's a calculated value to make sure that the file is what it is and hasn't been tampered with. So it basically lists all the ROMs, what they should be called, what their size, etc. should be. So then you can use programs to look at that DAT file, get it to scan your ROM set, and it will say whether they're all correct or not, or there's any that are missing, or what some that are named correctly or the wrong size. So that's good to check. But generally, download from here. I trust this site. I think I've never had an issue with it. So, but yeah, if you're more advanced, you can download the DAT file and run a scan against it. So anyway, they have the MAME sets here, the merge, non-merge, and the split, and then they have the CHD. So I haven't mentioned those yet. So back in the day when they first started, all the games were in zip files. They were all just ROM based, all on a system board, and that was that. As the arcade machines developed and started to introduce things like hard drives and CDs to hold the game, because as the games got bigger, more better graphics, more just larger in general, they started keeping stuff. You had stuff on the ROMs on the system board as well to actually, I guess, start and launch the system. But then a lot of the data for the game was stored on the CDs or hard drives. So CHD was introduced into MAME, and it's compressed hunks of data is what it stands for. So it's basically a dump of that disk, or a dump of that hard drive, or laser disk, whatever it might be. So obviously not every single game has a corresponding CHD, but a lot of games do. A lot of the more modern games do. So you'll download the set of ROMs, and then you'll download the set of CHDs to go with it. And again, you have them in all here, and the DAT file as well to confirm they're all present and correct. And then software list is what I was referring to, where MAME can now emulate the home computers and consoles. They provide, I guess, ROMs for those, but they call them a software list. And again, I might cover that in a separate video because that's a bit more involved. And again, with that, you have a ROM set and you have a CHD set. So for things like, it does PlayStation. So a lot of the PlayStation is, PlayStation is disc-based system. So all the games will be in CHD format for that. And then some extras here. So these are mainly sort of extra artwork and that kind of stuff that goes with them. So I tend to download those, but you don't have to. Some other bits about rolling back, so switching between versions, but you probably don't need to worry too much about that. And then again, like I say, they have another explanation of split versus merged versus non-merged here. And then just go back to the top. So if you want to, start from scratch and download the late full set, you do it here. But what I try and do is try and keep up. And so, like I say, each month they release a new version of MAME, which means a new ROM set. And then these guys release what they call update packs. So if you've kind of got 258 and now 259's released, if you download this pack here and just download it, extract it, copy it over the top, and replace any files, it'll basically update your pack from 258 to 259. And obviously these updates are a hell of a lot smaller, a couple of 100 meg, depending on how many updates they've made. Whereas a full set down here is gigs and gigs data. I think a full set now, the ROMs and the HDs, is nearly a terabyte. It's pretty big, so you can imagine you spend the time and effort to download this version, then it makes sense to download the update files to keep them up to date. And like I say, they've got update files for the ROMs and for the CHDs, and obviously for the software list for the home console computer systems, and again for the CHDs for those as well. So, and for the extras as well. So the extra artwork and flyers and that kind of stuff that you can have. So I think that's pretty much it. The other thing that comes with these is, or to mention, backlinks back on the wiki is things like samples. So some games needed samples. By samples, that's sound samples or audio samples that go with the game. Obviously, just to add to the audio. And like I say, yeah, some of them were stored separately, so they're in the same format. They're in zip files, the name of the game, and they go in these corresponding folders. But for RetroBat, for the latest version, they go, in this subfolder underneath the VARS folder in RetroBat. And again, yeah, this explains CHD files. So yeah, with some arcade games storing had data on disk or hard drive, and they've been supported by MAME for a while in this CHD format. They've got an example here, but I'll show you as well on my collection. So they've got Killer Instinct here, so you've got the zip file, which is the ROMs, but then it has a subfolder with the same name, and inside there is the Killer Instinct.chd file, which is, they're normally quite big, they're not sort of a couple hundred meg, maybe a couple of gig, depending on, if it's a newer game. But the CHD file, just to confuse things, doesn't always match the name of the zip file. And so here's my main folder. So I think for example of this, I've got, so we find Street Fighter 3. Down here's a zip file, so yeah, Street Fighter 3 N. If you go back to the top of the list, it should have a corresponding folder for its CHD. So we find Street Fighter 3. Where have I got it in? Oh, maybe it's a bad example. Or is a bad example. Let's Killer Instinct that they give anyway. So let me find another different one, sorry. So Area 51, this one is one of the ones that does actually match. So I'll just scroll down here a little bit. So you can tell I'm doing it. I like to do my videos live without sort of pre-rehearsal, so things like that happen. So Area 51, so this is the, so it's only 300k, it's not very big at all. This is the main ROMs, so I can actually just open this and show you. And these are kind of what the ROM dumps look like inside. A good example of what they look. So, like I say, each one of these probably corresponds to a physical ROM on the motherboard that I showed in that picture earlier. And then, obviously, it has a corresponding hard drive or CD inside the arcade cabinet, and that's been dumped in here, the CHD. So this is 1.6 gigs. So you say that the bulk of the game is on this image. The ROM is there just to kind of, I guess, start the machine. And like I say, this one does match. So the CHD file is called the same as the ROM. But you'll find in some of these, like this one here, look. So for BHH, I'm not really sure what that game is, but its CHD file is this BHH underscore V1, etc., etc. Whereas the actual zip file is just called BBH. I'm going to confirm that. Down here, also it's a big list. If I know my alphabet. Where is it? BBH. There's a few there. And sometimes some of these games, for different versions, they can share a single CHD. So anyway, you have all your ROMs in zip files, and then for the ones that have a CHD that goes with them, they'll have a folder that you put in the ROMs folder and the ROM folder name matches the name of the zip. But like I say, the contents inside it might not necessarily match. Some of them do, some of them don't. But anyway, that's pretty irrelevant. You just kind of download, and whatever you download, that's extract it and go with it. So yes, so I think now we can actually look at the actually adding to RetroBat, sorry. So again, this wiki really good, shows you how to do it. So the main thing, like I say, is the versions. So with RetroBat, so the current version 5.3, at the time of making this video, it actually supports multiple versions. So you can see here you've got some older sets which are quite popular versions. So it starts from 37B5, which was back in 2000, 78, 2003, all the way up to version 174, which is roughly 2016, and then it supports the current version. Although you'll notice the current version right now is 259. This one, for them, current is 251. So 251 obviously was the latest version when they put together RetroBat 5.3, but since then things have moved on. This is where you have to kind of decide what you want to do with MAME, and you could just keep up the latest version, so once a month download the update pack, copy the files across, copy into RetroBat, but then also you'd need to manually update the version of MAME over, either the RetroArch version or the standalone version to match. So at the moment we're on 2.5.9. If I download 2.5.9, put it into RetroBat, most of the games would work, because also there's not much difference between 2.5.1 and 2.5.9. It's not a million miles apart, but they're the same year. But if you want to be exact and make sure that the best chance of everything working, you want to keep the versions the same. So what I tend to do is say pick a version and then stick with it. So you could, for ease here, download version 2.5.1, find 2.5.1 somewhere on the internet, put it in, and then you'll know it's going to work. It's 2.5.1, and then stick with that. Don't worry about the new versions coming out. Stick with 2.5.1 for a long time. I've seen other people suggest this as well. Just pick a version and stick with it for a while, because there's not huge amounts of change each month when they release new versions. Obviously, if a game comes in that you really want, you might want to update, and then you need to update version emulators, etc. But definitely the best approach is to pick a version and stick with it. And just to make things a little bit more confusing or difficult with RetroBat, so for the LibRetro or the RetroArch version, it's 2.5.1, but if using a standalone emulator, it's 2.5.3, so it's slightly different. In my case, I set this up like last month. I've gone with 2.5.8. It was the latest version at the time, so I downloaded a full set, got it all downloaded already, and then what I've done is manually update RetroBat to 2.5.8, both the standalone version and the RetroArch version. So now I know I've got 2.5.8 ROM set, and I've got version 2.5.8 of both the main emulators, the RetroArch emulator and the standalone emulator in RetroBat, so I know everything matches. So then when I come to the point, when they release version 5.4 of RetroBat, which I doubt they will, you'd imagine that these versions of MAME are going to update. So what I've done is I've obviously I've got a copy of version 2.5.8 of the emulator and the core, the RetroArch, and I've got those stored safely. So when I do update my version of RetroBat to the latest version, I can then copy those versions back in, and I know I'm going to go back to 2.5.8. I know everything's all working. I don't have to go and update my ROM set. So yeah, to show what that looks like, let's see, I picked 2.5.8 at the time, which is here, but if you're going for the latest version, go to the latest release, which is 2.5.9. So grab a copy of this and keep it safe. It's not particularly big. And then for the RetroArch or LibRetro core, the RetroArch, you can come to this address here. Again, I'll put in the description, and you've got the various versions. So you scroll down to the bottom here, the latest version of RetroArch, and then pick Windows, and then in here you've got all the cores in a zip file. You can download this. This is going to have the latest version of the core available for you. If you did want to go to a previous version of MAME, if you already got a ROM set, say of I don't know, 240, you've got it. It's got a nice collection. You know it's good. So you want to use that in RetroBat. You can come back here and find an older version that's around about the right time, and download that. So for start in the MAME side of things, go to downloads, go to previous versions, and scroll down the list. You find 240, which I just whizzed past. The 240 is here. It was released end of January 22. Download the probably the 64-bit executable, depending on what your system is, but download this is standalone version. Download that and keep it safe. And then if you look here and look for a version around about the same version, so what did I say? I've forgotten already. So January 22. So normally you can come back here, go to January 22. So 110 was released then. Go into Windows, go into 64-bit, download this file here, and then inside there will be the 240 version of the main core, the RetroArch, and so you can download that and keep it safe. So I won't download them now, I've downloaded them already. So here's the 64-bit version, so I've got downloaded 2.5.9. So this is the this is MAME. It's just expanded it into the folder with me rather than the subfolder, which I would have changed. But anyway, so you'll see this is now the main folder, and we've got the MAME exe here, and it's version 259. And then for the actual core, oh, that's helpful. What should happen then? So this is the actual MAME core. So this will be inside this zip file. Oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong bit. So if you download this RetroArch cores and open it up, you'll have a whole bunch of DLLs that you can see here. And one of them will be MAME_libretro.dll. So just open up that zip file. Like I say, so that is the core. That is version 259 of the MAME core. Again, you can keep that safe somewhere, and then we're going to basically just copy both those into your RetroBat folder, and you'll know what version you've got. Then you know that they're both, in this case, both 259. So to do that, if you just go into find your RetroBat folder, which I've got here. So in my RetroBat folder, go into the emulators folder, and then firstly you'll find MAME. So this is what I just expanded into my C temp. So this is the main folder. So all you would do is, or all I would do is just rename this to .old to keep make sure we've got a copy of it. Actually, there might be some ini files in here, some settings, etc. that you probably want to keep. So what I'd probably do is take a copy and then work with a copy instead, and then come back to the file you downloaded. So it was .exe. Where's the zip file gone? There. So I'll just expand that to there this time, so I don't merge it all into the rest. So this is our standalone version of MAME, version 259. So you'll see this here matches. Let's put them side by side. Right here. So I'll just go back to where RetroBat is. Oh, I'm going to ROMs, not going to emulators. MAME. Where is it? MAME.old anyway. So basically, let's say you see there's a few extra folders and stuff in here. So what I'd probably do is take a copy of it to make sure you got a copy, that in case anything goes wrong. But literally just pick up this lot, right-click copy, go into this main folder here, right-click paste. It prompts you to overwrite, say yes. So overwrite anything that's existing, but all these other extra ini files will stay in place, which is what you want. And then you're good to go. Then you know the standalone version of MAME is now 259. And then to update the core for RetroArch is slightly more straightforward. Go into RetroArch here, go into the cores folder. If I just come back here and go back there, this is the core. And for Windows, it's a .dll file. So you see, this is all the cores, all .dll files for RetroArch that come with RetroBat. And then down this list, you'll have MAME. Like I see in the wiki where it says it supports older versions of MAME, so MAME 2000, 2003. These are all the different cores for that. And then that one there, you could just rename. You could put a .old on the end just to keep it, just in case anything goes wrong. And then literally copy this DLL into here, and then you know you've got version 259 in this case of the core for RetroArch. So now you're in a state where your RetroArch for RetroBat, confusing, your RetroArch core version is 259. You know your standalone version of MAME is 259, and you know your ROM set is 259. So everything should match. And like I say, putting the ROMs across is just a case of going into the RetroBat folder, into ROMs, and into MAME. and just extracting the stuff you downloaded and putting it in here. So like all the zip files just go in the root, they stay zipped, don't unzip them, this is fine. And then CHDs you put in the root as well, dump them in here, so they're all containing folders already, and then within there is the CHDs. So as long as you've got them like that, start up RetroBat and you'll be good to go. Like I say, the reason for updating both RetroArch and the standalone MAME emulator is just so you've got a choice. You might find some games work better in RetroArch. I think RetroArch is the default that RetroBat uses, but within RetroBat you can either, for the whole system you can say, okay, for the whole of MAME, use standalone MAME instead. It might work better on your system for whatever reason. Or you can do it per game, so you might have the default as RetroArch, but there might be a couple of games that don't work properly for whatever reason. RetroArch can work better in standalone version of MAME, so you can go into their settings in RetroBat and say, for this game, use standalone MAME. But then you know it's still version 258, so it should work fine because it's the emulator matches the ROM set version. So hopefully that all makes sense. I feel like I've gone quite quickly and probably rambled a bit, but I think the key thing is versions. Like I say, is the version of MAME that you use, the ROM set, the set of ROMs, the games, whatever you want to call them, that they're made in versions, as it's quite easy, probably better to illustrate here. They release a new version of MAME every month, and with that a new set is defined. Like I say, a lot of the set remains exactly the same. Some games will get added, some games might get taken away, some games might have a new dump. Someone's got, one of the dumps may have never worked properly, and someone's got hold of a version, a better copy of the physical cabinet and re-dumped the ROMs out of it, and now they're working properly, so it might replace it. But like I say, not a great deal changes between each versions, and I think you can actually see that on the main welcome page. It talks about MAME, what it is, etc. Also, you can get MAME for various platforms. So yeah, 259. Here they said they started emulating some new systems. Namco System 12 games are working. A few other bits and pieces. So if you want to, you can read in here. There's a what's new.txt file to read. So for each version, it does tell you what's changed, but generally it's they've improved emulating some games and fixed some games and that kind of stuff. It's not a huge difference. So for me at the moment, I'm on 258, so it's a fairly recent version, and I'm going to stick with that for the foreseeable future, because I know it works. And like I say, it's a bit of a pain, because if you then want to go and update, okay, I now want to jump to, or if you want to stay up to date, you want to stay, 258's out, now 259's out, you'd have to go to that website I mentioned that I've linked here, the PleasureDome one, download all these update files, copy them over. You then need to go into RetroBat and download, or go to the website and download the latest version of MAME. Also download the latest version of the RetroArch core and put that across. And doing that once a month, it doesn't sound, it's only once a month, it's only 12 times a year, but it can be a pain. For me, I just want my RetroBat system to be done, working, and I don't have to keep fiddling with it, all the time. I just want it there, ready and working. So yes, if you're doing MAME, pick a version and stick with it for a good while. If you've already got a MAME set that you've been using and want to add it into RetroBat, just make sure you can confirm what version it is. And like I said, I'll probably do another video on using the DAT files to actually use tools to actually run it against your ROM set to tell you whether that ROM set is complete, or it's missing, or it's completely wrong. I'm pretty sure I've not seen yet a tool which you can basically point at a random ROM set and say, right, okay, tell me what ROM set this is. I don't think it really works like that. You have the tools, and then you have the DAT file for a particular version. You put that DAT file into the tool, point it at your folder full of ROMs. It'll scan it and say, okay, well, matching it to this DAT file, which is version 240, for example, that ROM set is complete. It's a 240 ROM set, brilliant, you've got everything, it's good to go. Or it might come up and say, well, these are okay, but all these ones are mismatched. These are from a different version of MAME, it's not 240, it's something else. So you could, if you want to stick with 240, you could, okay, ignore those, delete those bad ones and clean them out for me, and just leave me with the 240 compatible ones. So So, but anyway, I cover all that in a different video because it's far too long now. We're over half an hour already, just on MAME. So yeah, hopefully that was useful. Hopefully it all made sense and I didn't ramble too much and didn't go too quickly. But yeah, like again, I can't say it enough. The key thing with MAME is the versions, but then also, you know, deciding what type of step you want, whether you want a non-merged or a split. And like I say, for putting MAME games into a front end like RetroBat or anything else, really, I'd recommend the non-merged. So you have a zip file per game. So even if you've got a game here that's got a couple of clones or a couple of regional versions, you'll have a zip file for every single one. So you know exactly which game you're going to launch through RetroBat menu. So yeah, I'm not sure whether you can do merged within RetroBat, because obviously if you had a merge set and you clicked on it in RetroBat, I don't know whether that I haven't tried it, to be honest, but it has a capability to then prompt you and say, okay, this is a merge set. Which game do you want to run? Do you want to run the parent, or do you want to run one of the clones? You know, like an example earlier, do you want to run the English version of it, or do you want to run the Japanese version of it? I don't know whether it supports that. It might do, but I think for me that just overcomplicates it. You have a non-merge set. Yes, it's a bit bigger, but you know that, you know, a zip file for a game is the zip file for that game, and it's going to work. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I hope you enjoyed the video. Should be a few more coming now. I'm still working on the RetroBat overall collection. It's taken a while to sort that one out, but it's close now. It's very close. Once that's ready, I'll make a final video for the RetroBat series with links, etc., and all information how to use it and where to get it from. Up until now, obviously, each system's been in separate links, but the idea is when we get to the end, there'll be a single link where everything is. You can grab what you want, what you need, and set it up. And then I'll do the same for the Batasura build that's kind of following the same set, because they're very similar systems in the fact they both use Emulation Station. Obviously one's Windows based, one's Linux based, but the actual sort of most of the ROM packs or the game sets are interchangeable. So I'll finish that one off as well, and then I'll be looking to do more videos like this around sort of explaining particular systems a bit more in depth on the system, how to add it into RetroBat or other front ends, and kind of best practice and how to get stuff and what to do with it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Give us a like if you liked it. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Cheers, bye.